Now we have Dr. Kent Gardner is going to speak on what he's heard. He comes to us from Rochester, where he's the Chief Research Officer for the Center of Government Research. He's been studying economics and public finance and regional economic and analyst for 25 years. He's immediate past president of the National Governmental Research Association and currently serves as secretary to that organization. He has a bachelor's, master's, and doctorate from the University of Wisconsin. He's joined the Center for Government Research in Rochester as Director of Economic Analyst in 1991 and was president of the organization from 2005 to 2012.
Thank you, Mike. Well, so I've been in New York since 1991, and I've been in Rochester since 1991, and been asking this same question since 1991. Why is it that the upstate economy seems to languish while other parts of the country do reasonably well? So I got a few suggestions. Nothing definitive, but we had one of our supporters came to us, I don't know, a year or so ago and said, hey, I do business in Toronto. I do business in upstate New York. Look at what's going on in Toronto, for heaven's sake. Job growth in upstate is zero. Job growth in the Golden Horseshoe is really substantial, 2.8 million up to 3.8 million from 96 to 2011. You look at the population numbers, the same thing. Toronto Metro up 32% in terms of total population. Upstate, if you're looking, now my definition of upstate for convenience is simply Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse. And we're looking at those metros only. If it hadn't been for the growth in Rochester, we would have had a net decline. In aggregate, we end up kind of zero. So significant growth in jobs in Toronto, significant growth in population in Toronto, and yet when we take a look at upstate New York, nothing's going on at all. So how come? Well, one option is immigration. It's timely to be talking about immigration. We know that immigration in the United States, total immigration, has been reasonably constant, and it's been reasonably constant in Canada too, but at twice the rate in terms of total immigration. But not only total immigration, but you can also look at economic immigration, that is the immigration of people who have specific job skills. And again, adjusted for population, it is 10 times the rate in Canada that it is in the United States. So Toronto disproportionately benefits from that kind of immigration. And well, again, this isn't a definitive study, but certainly you get the sense that immigration has some role to play in Toronto's prosperity and perhaps in the reverse, some of the problems that we've had in upstate. Taxes, second issue. KPMG did this nice study in 2012, September 2012, where they looked at the total effective corporate tax rate. Now, they're including payroll taxes, and surprisingly, not surprisingly, Paris is up there on the top. We have the instance of Parisians leaving, leaving France for other places. Who was it that just became a Russian? That's right. Gérard Depardieu became a Russian because he wanted to escape these incredible taxes in France. But if you take a look at Buffalo and compare Buffalo to Toronto, you see that the tax rate in Buffalo, corporate tax rate, is substantially higher than it is in Toronto, which was to me a bit of a surprise. We tend to think of Ontario as being a high tax area. Now, again, there's some wiggles in here, and there's a longer conversation we could have about this. But looking at these corporate tax numbers, Buffalo is a more expensive place to do business than is Toronto. So two examples, two possibilities. First, we have immigration, and then second, we have taxation. Possible explanations for the difference, certainly contributing factors. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about Eastman Kodak. Again, I think when you ask the question, what's going on in upstate, ultimately you get down to a question that is, I think, a good bit more granular than upstate. So that's the one, I suppose, caveat I'd make to EJ's presentation is when you roll all of upstate together, you're putting together a lot of very diverse economies. And those economies are growing and shrinking for a lot of reasons. Many of those reasons, I think, are really quite granular. If you look at Rochester, it's impossible to tell Rochester's story without telling Kodak's story. So Eastman Kodak back in 1982 peaked jobs at 60,400. At this point, we're down to maybe 3,500 jobs, a little more than that. It's not really clear because Kodak, of course, is in bankruptcy. I bought Kodak stock at 55 when China's billions had yet to take a frame. Scarcely did I dream that digital would seem such a threat to all those yellow boxes stacked from beam to beam. And now they've gone and sold those patents off, trying to slow down the closing doors. If George Eastman only knew what chaos would ensue, then he'd be buying Tesla too. And of course, the other story for Kodak is around Kodak's bonus. The bonus is a very big deal in Rochester. They actually paid a bonus this year, incidentally. I've got a good friend of mine at church, and he came up to me. He says, "Kent, I can't believe it. I'm getting a bonus." It used to be a very, very big deal. In fact, the United Way campaign in Rochester has always been in the spring. Well, for most of you, the United Way campaign is in the fall. It's in the spring because the bonus came out in April. And when that April bonus came out, it was a great time to hit people up for a contribution. And it was also good, of course, for everybody else in the community. So if you'll put up with one more. I'm dreaming of a Kodak bonus, just like the ones we used to know, when cash registers were ringing and charities were singing the praises of George Eastman long ago. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. I'm dreaming of a Kodak bonus, 8% to 60,000 strong. For while Rochester's future seems bright, I fear Kodak's gonna lose this fight. Gonna lose this fight. And there's the bonus. Again, that's the story of Kodak, a significant shrinkage, and I thought it would also be interesting to take a quick look at this clip here.
Hi there, my name is Jeff, and we're here today to document the implosion of Building 9 at Kodak here in Rochester, New York. Kodak has been good enough to let us bring our cameras in here to get a close-up view of all the action. There are a lot of people here from the surrounding neighborhoods. This thing has been all over the local news, and Kodak's been hinting that there's something big planned. So let's check it out.
I've never seen anything like this before. That's the truth. I really haven't. This is amazing.
But a lot of good relationships that are still together today were formed in that building.
I want to take this opportunity to welcome you all on this gorgeous sunny day in Rochester, New York, to this very unique moment in Kodak's history.
It's also exciting to be a part of another revolution in imaging.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Tell me what you thought.
It was the coolest thing I've ever seen. It was like an early start to the 4th of July.
Nice day for a revolution.
It's a nice day for a revolution.
A nice day for a revolution.
Ah, what a nice day for a revolution, huh? Booyah.
Well, what more can I say? These guys know how to drop a building with style. Hope you enjoyed it. And thanks to Kodak for the access. Bye now.
To Kodak's credit, they spent $350 million taking down buildings in their old Kodak Park. And that $350 million that they spent made it possible to create the Eastman Business Park. Eastman Business Park, 1,200 acres, 100 buildings, 1.5 miles, million square feet, 30 miles of road, 17 miles of railroad. They've got their own power plant, they've got their own water plant, they've got their own water treatment plant. I mean, this is a city. It's a pretty good-sized city. Right now, they've been, since they created Eastman Business Park, they now have sold it to other companies. They've got 3,500 employees on the park. There are still a lot of Kodak employees on the park. They've also managed to, thank goodness, sold off the utilities to recycled energy development so that the state doesn't end up holding the bag if Kodak doesn't come out of bankruptcy. The other thing I'll say about Kodak is that at this point it would appear that, as one of the board members said, that the friendlier creditors have gotten control of the remnants of the company, so it's likely that Kodak is going to come out of bankruptcy. And we hope we'll stay out of bankruptcy for a while, maybe forever. That would be great. But certainly for the community and for Eastman Business Park, we need to see Kodak come out of bankruptcy and be able to shepherd this forward. So again, at a granular level, we know that we've got, we really do have to pay attention to what happens to individual companies, because individual companies are what are going to make things successful. In Rochester, for example, one of the companies that has purchased a piece of Kodak Park is called Ledestri Foods. We've got a very good food processing sector in Rochester. Ledestri Foods makes, believe it or not, they can package, and it's tomato sauce. It's a real high-tech product. But it's not a bunch of ladies in babushkas with wooden spoons, right? He can make 2 million jars of sauce per day, with 650 employees. So that's a great success story. Okay, now a few comments about hydrofracking. Economists point, there's no free lunch, right? If you want to, turn on your iPads and you want to have energy. Energy is a dirty business. It's always been a dirty business. We've managed to be insulated from that in New York. So we're confronting what people in other parts of the country and other parts of the world have known for a long time. And also make the point that the cost of energy matters, and natural gas is the cheapest source of energy we have when you throw in the capital costs. These are levelized numbers from the U.S. Energy Information sector. And we know that if you're taking a look at people in the lowest income bracket, the lowest 20%, they pay nearly 10% of their income on energy. So if you worry about the cost of energy, we're worrying about cost of energy for the people who really care. As Diana pointed out, there are environmental benefits. Last point I want to make is about regulation. I would argue that we can have smart regulation that would make a difference and would make it possible to safely use hydrofracking. The other point I'd make is that we've not always used smart regulation. If you take a look at the ethanol situation, we're looking at 40% of our crop going to ethanol at this point. It's really a very, very badly designed piece of regulation. Not quite as bad as what the Europeans did. Part of their renewable fuel standard, they declared wood to be a renewable fuel, and now most of the renewables being burned in Europe, it's wood. And isn't that great? Now they are scouring the world, bringing wood to fuel their plants in Finland and the UK. And of course, if you're going to have a $68 per megawatt subsidy, it does make biomass, it does make wood by far the cheapest source of energy they can have. So let's pass smart laws, not stupid laws, and let's consider what the benefits of hydrofracking might be for the state.